The 10 eminent disciples of Buddha. The 2 disciples closest to Buddha, Riputra and Mahmudgalyana. Both Riputra and Mahmudgalyana attained enlightenment as an arhat 2 weeks after ordaining. They have a deep spiritual friendship. Riputra was the first disciple the Buddha allowed to ordain other monks. They have complementing roles as teachers. Riputra is regarded as an important and wise disciple of the Buddha, particularly in Theravada Buddhism, where he is given a status close to a second Buddha. Mahmudgalyana is known for his psychic powers. He has also traditionally been associated with meditation. Riputra died shortly before the Buddha in his hometown. His relics were then enshrined at Jetavana Monastery. Mahmudgalyana dies at the age of 84, killed through the efforts of a rival sect. This violent death is described in Buddhist scriptures as a result of Mahmudgalyana's karma of having killed his own parents in a previous life. Markyapa. Markyapa is regarded in Buddhism as an enlightened disciple. He was foremost in ascetic practice. He assumed leadership of the monastic community following the parinirvana of the Buddha and presided over the first Buddhist council. Markyapa was born in a Brahmin family. His original name was Pipali. Pipali entered an arranged marriage with a woman named Bada Karpalani. Both aspired to lead a celibate life, however, and they decided not to consummate their marriage. Both became mendicants. Pipali later met the Buddha, under whom he was ordained as a monk, named Kayapa, but later called Markyapa to distinguish him from other disciples. Markyapa became an important disciple of the Buddha, to the extent that the Buddha exchanged his robe with him, which was a symbol of the transmittance of the Buddhist teaching. He often had disputes with Ananda, the attendant of the Buddha, due to their different dispositions and views. Despite his ascetic, strict and stern reputation, he paid an interest in community matters and teaching, and was known for his compassion for the poor, which sometimes caused him to be depicted as an anti-establishment figure. He acted as a sort of eldest son of the Buddha. In many post-canonical texts, Markyapa decided at the end of his life to enter a state of meditation and suspended animation, which was believed to cause his physical remains to stay intact in a cave under a mountain called Kukutpada, until the coming of Maitreya Buddha. Supti is considered the disciple who was foremost in being worthy of gifts and living remote and in peace in Theravada Buddhism. In Mahayana Buddhism, he is considered foremost in understanding emptiness. Supti was born into a wealthy family and became a monk after hearing the Buddha teach at the dedication ceremony of Jetavana Monastery. After being ordained, Supti went into the forest and became an arhat meditating on loving-kindness. It is said that due to his mastery of loving-kindness meditation, any gift offered to him bore the greatest merit for the donor, thus earning him the title of foremost in being worthy of gifts. Supti is a major figure in Mahayana Buddhism and is one of the central figures in Prajnaparamita Sutras. For instance, the Diamond Sutra is framed as a question and answer between the Buddha and Supti, resulting in the latter's deepened insight into emptiness, a core philosophical component underlying the entire Mahayana worldview. Anirudh. Anirudh was a top master of clairvoyance and the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Anirudh was a cousin of Shakyamuni Buddha. He and Ananda became monks at the same time. He was foremost in divine insight. He lost his sight because he swore not to sleep after getting criticized by the Buddha. And later he got another pair of eyes that is believed to have the power to see the truth. Pura Maitrayaniputra and Katyayana. Pra Maitrayaniputra was also called Purna for short. He was the greatest teacher of the law out of all the disciples. He was the top master of preaching. Katyayana or Markyana understood the Buddha's lecture the best. Upali. Upali, according to early Buddhist texts, was mainly responsible for the reciting and reviewing monastic discipline on the first Buddhist council. Upali was born as a low-caste barber. He met the Buddha when still a child, and later, when the Sakya princes received ordination, he did so as well. He was, in fact, ordained before the princes, putting humility before caste. Having been ordained, Uppli learnt both Buddhist doctrine and Vinaya. Uppli became known for his mastery and strictness of Vinaya, and was consulted often about Vinaya matters. During the first council, Uppli received the important role of reciting the Vinaya, for which he is mostly known. Rahula. Rula was the only son of Siddhartha Gautama, and his wife, Princess Yada. According to the Pali tradition, Rula was born on the day of Prince Siddhartha's renunciation, and was therefore named Rula, meaning a fetter on the path to enlightenment. According to some other sources, Rula was conceived on the day of Prince Siddhartha's renunciation. Between 7 and 15 years after Rula was born, the Buddha returns to Kapilavastu, where Yada had Rula ask the Buddha for the throne of the Kya clan. The Buddha responded by having Rula ordained as the first Buddhist novice monk. He taught the young novice about truth, self-reflection, and not self, eventually leading to Rula's enlightenment. Rula is known in Buddhist texts for his eagerness for learning and was honored by novice monks and nuns throughout Buddhist history. His accounts have led to a perspective in Buddhism of seeing children as hindrances to the spiritual life on the one hand, and as people with potential for enlightenment on the other hand. Ananda. Nanda was the primary attendant of the Buddha. Among the Buddha's many disciples, Nanda stood out for having the best memory. Most of the texts of the early Buddhist sutras are attributed to his recollection of the Buddha's teachings during the first Buddhist council. Nanda was the first cousin of the Buddha. As the attendant of the Buddha, Nanda performed his duties with great devotion and care and acted as an intermediary between the Buddha and the lay people, as well as the Sangha. He accompanied the Buddha for the rest of his life, acting not only as an assistant, but also a secretary and a mouthpiece. Nanda played an important role in establishing the order of bhikkhunis, when he requested the Buddha on behalf of the latter's foster mother Mahaprajpat Gautam to allow her to be ordained.
Ananda also accompanied the Buddha in the last year of his life, and therefore witnessed many tenets and principles that the Buddha conveyed and established before his death, including the well-known principle that the Buddhist community should take his teaching and discipline as their refuge, and that the Buddha would not appoint a new leader. Ananda was still very much attached to the Buddha's person, and he witnessed the Buddha's passing with great sorrow. Shortly after the Buddha's death, the first council was convened, and Ananda managed to attain enlightenment just before the council started, which was a requirement. He had a historical role during the council as the living memory of the Buddha, reciting many of the Buddha's discourses and checking them for accuracy. During the same council, he was chastised by Mahakasyapa and the rest of the Sangha for allowing women to be ordained and failing to understand or respect the Buddha at several crucial moments. Ananda continued to teach until the end of his life, passing on his spiritual heritage to his pupils Sanakavasi and Madhyantika, among others, who later assume a leading role in the second and third councils. Ananda dies in 463 BCE, and his stupas are erected at the river where he dies. Ananda is one of the most loved figures in Buddhism. Ananda is known for his memory, erudition and compassion, and is often praised by the Buddha for these matters. He functioned as a foil to the Buddha, however, in that he still had worldly attachments and is not yet enlightened, as opposed to the Buddha. Ananda is widely considered the patriarch of the Dhamma, who stands in a spiritual lineage, receiving the teaching from Mahakasyapa and passing them on to his own pupils. Ananda has been honored by bhikkhunis since early medieval times for his merits in establishing the nuns' order. The composer Richard Wagner wrote a draft for a libretto about Ananda, which was made into the opera Wagner Dream by Johann Harvey in 2007.